Okay, so this is the exterior of the Indiana Pod Observatory. It's a 5-bay pod with black insulated bays, and it houses a 14-inch Meade ACF telescope. It's been out here for about 3 years, and as you can see, it looks pretty much as good as new. I've only washed it once in that 3 years. The dome cover is well worth the investment. It keeps it absolutely watertight, although I've never had any water in the pod before, but it's just an extra sort of belt and suspenders approach here. There's a few brown spots on it due to weathering, but overall it is in excellent shape, and it's done very well over the 3 years it's been out here. May at some point need replacing, but not right now. When we go inside here, one of the things you'll notice is it's actually quite spacious, even though it's a relatively small building, and that's because the pods themselves, these black-lined insulated pods, offer an enormous amount of storage space and really make the pod look a bit like Doctor Who's TARDIS. You know, it's bigger on the inside than on the outside. This is my main workstation. You could have several, obviously, in these pods, but I just have the one. You can see the observing list to the side here. The guiding computer is sitting there, along with connections for analog video cameras that I sometimes use. There is, however, no imaging computer here yet, because I have that at home and I tend to work on the images at home. I have a laptop I use for imaging, not a desktop computer. As you can see, the pods themselves have plenty of storage space. That's the AstraZap, sometimes gets used. A very large 14-inch Batinov mask over there that helps with focusing. And then this is the 14-inch scope itself with an Orion ED80 sitting piggyback on it for both auto guiding and imaging, depending on how I'm using the setup that particular day. And of course there's a 2-inch visual back on this. Right now I've got the diagonal in place, but that's only used some of the time. Sometimes that diagonal's out when I'm doing certain kinds of imaging. I had to have a tripod in here because this is on school property and I couldn't make permanent changes to the landscaping, so it's sitting on 3 concrete blocks on dirt, essentially, which is what's under the floor here. Easily leveled up, it stays very stable, and the platform has worked very well over the 3 years it's been out here, and we've had some very good shots, very good images. It's fast and easy to set up. You can see a bunch of cable there. That's cable that I run out to an external electric source because, again, I'm on school grounds, and so I can't, I can't run power directly into the pod itself. The scope itself has some homemade additions on it to keep it balanced statically and dynamically. You can see this clamp. It's just the perfect weight to add to these counterweights to balance the tube precisely. And then the Meade Ultra Wedge is actually the worst piece of this whole setup. It's expensive and junky, and I wish I'd never really gotten it, because there are much better solutions out there for a wedge. But it works well in an observatory setting. If it's outside, wind causes a lot of vibration. As you can see, a lot of the mass has been removed. You know, that's exactly what you need in a wedge, is mass, and they've taken a lot of it out. These knobs strip and come off with a heavy scope like the 14-inch on it, and so you can see I've got a wrench here for adjusting the polar axis of this mount. But I still like the wedge more than anything else. I still prefer it to, to a gem, for example, where you've got meridian flip and other kinds of things to deal with. The other main disadvantage of the pod, you can see as you look up, there's tons of space. The 14-inch fits in here really well, but up here is, you can see that's where the domes join, and when you open the dome up, you push one part, this clamshell up, and it goes over and down the other side here. Problem is, your zenith is obscured, and that's the problem with the pod, and so that will have to be changed at some point. And I hope to add a zenith table. I have the kit. I just have to buy the plywood and build it. which essentially makes this dome into a roll-off shed. So you get to have a run-off roof observatory, but you also get to have a dome, which is really what I think most astronomers, amateur astronomers, in their hearts want to have anyway. So anyway, that is the Skyshec POD. Absolutely fantastic, maintenance-free observatory. This is the best purchase decision anybody could make in terms of an observatory. I do have a runoff at a dark sky site, and it is a maintenance nightmare, always having to do something to it. This one, perfect. I never have to do a thing apart from wash it down with soapy water every so often. So again, I would highly recommend the Skyshec POD, especially with the black-lined insulated bays. They really do make a difference when it comes to temperature, and they give the observatory a more permanent kind of finished look than the semi-translucent panels that they would be if it didn't have the insulation and the black lining. So thank you very much for dropping by and for looking at this video. And again, if you're looking for a relatively inexpensive observatory solution, I can highly recommend the Skyshec POD, even if you have a large scope, like a 12 or 14 inch, like the one that's in here. Thanks, everybody.